Hello and welcome to the podcast. You're listening to 10 More Questions, a podcast lovingly created by the people of Nice Work, a company building and activating brands for rebels, dreamers, and pioneers that people actually care about. It's no secret that you need a strong brand, but what exactly does building one entail? And how can you ensure that your brand both stands out and supports your business? In 10 More Questions, we explore this relationship between business and brand, chatting to thought and industry leaders about how exactly to turn a brand from a cost center to a company asset. As always, I'm your host, Ross Drakes. Today on the podcast, I have Isaiah Nolte. Isaiah helps leadership teams build companies that stay healthy as they scale. He's the co-creator of the Bloom Growth Operating System and the co-author of Flourish, with more than a decade of experience guiding organizations through the shift from founder-led to team-managed. At Bloom, he was part of the scaling company that, from the early stage to the multi-million-dollar growth, supporting thousands of business across different industries. Welcome to the podcast, and the title of today's show is Building Community Around Your Brand, Bloom Growth's Secret to Growth.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. That's quite an intro to live up to.
Well, that's my job. I need to get people excited and I need to get them wanting to hear from you. I mean, from my side, it's been interesting. I'm an EO member, Entrepreneurs Organization member of 14 years. And for a long time, it was, if you wanted an operating business for your company, it was scaling up or EOS. Like those were the sort of operating systems you could choose from. And people are quite vehemently passionate about one or the other. And over the last couple of years, I've seen this scrappy little startup kind of pop up here and there. And now, some of the people that I respect, quite a lot are starting to switch their titles on LinkedIn and things like that to Bloom Growth Coach. Can you share a little bit around what Bloom Growth is? And then we'll get into how you convinced all of these smart people to switch sides, to switch allegiances, as it were.
Well, Ross, thank you for that. So I think if I can just sum this up into a short phrase or a set of words, is we are passionate about helping the entrepreneurial community. That's how the Bloom Growth OS even came to being. Is we were the first software provider to pioneer software in the operating system space. And for having a software platform for over 10 years that worked with thousands of coaches in the top 10 different operating systems in the space, we have an enormous amount of data and we're able to see where companies were struggling or where their operating system fell off the rails. And that's essentially how Bloom Growth was born. We took this data, filled in the gaps, knowing that entrepreneurial businesses had greater needs, specifically in sales and marketing, finance and data. This interesting piece called relationships or the team health aspect of running a business. So many times we go into a business and everybody thinks that there's business problems to solve, but the majority of the time it's people issues. Whether there's friction in relationships, misalignment, communication's not working, etc. And there's a big need to get that piece of the business strong, the relationship piece. So how did we get started? I mean, that's how we got started. We saw this need in the marketplace. So we filled in the gaps of the current operating systems. We developed the Bloom Growth OS. And then we just began to share, Ross, with other entrepreneurs. They noticed the same gaps, if you will, made sense to them. And we all have this desire to give back to the entrepreneurial community. I remember I started my first business when I was 18. I was speaking in Houston last week, and I shared with the audience, I was like, I wish I could go back in time and coach and mentor my younger self and share the things that I know now back then. Hindsight's always 20/20, but that's the passion that all of our entrepreneurial coaches have that unites us and binds us together to want to give back, to help entrepreneurs grow and succeed, which ultimately, impacts their leadership team, their employees, their customers, and you get the ripple effect.
Oh, thanks for sharing. I mean, there's lots for me to take on there, but the one I really want to sort of start with is this, I guess, singular mission, purpose, sort of objective that you all share of giving back and helping entrepreneurs. Like how did you, because most brands that we see, or most businesses that we see that try build community around their company, often don't have that singularity. It's like that, almost that single focus is the thing that allows everyone to sort of align and then approach it from completely different ways, but ultimately heading in the same direction. So you sort of get the best of the analytical people and the best of the emotional people and the best of the driven people. They can kind of all contribute to this sort of single focus, even if the work is not the same, not singular in that way.
Well, I mean, the first thing, which I'm sure most folks that are on this call and listening to this podcast know, is getting clear on your values and being able to articulate them in such a way that they're simple and easy to understand. So that's the first thing, Ross, is we don't have our values in a marketing sense, but we do share them up front with entrepreneurs who are interested in joining our coaching community. And it completely acts as a filter. People that aren't aligned with these values or are seeking after money or, win at any cost, no matter what it takes, it's not in alignment with our values, and it just disqualifies people, or they opt out of joining the community. Our value that is completely alive within our coaching community is this abundance mentality, this giving without expectations, where we help the entrepreneurs that we meet with in any way that we can. So if you need a fractional CFO and you're not ready to engage with me as a growth coach, and I have fractional CFO contacts that I know are great, of course I'm going to make an introduction. I'm going to do what's in the best interest for you and your business. And this shared value or abundance mentality is shared with all of the entrepreneurs within our community. And it acts as a magnet, Ross, to attract people. If I go back to my younger days, I helped start and found a church in Central America. We started in a house with 5 people, grew to 1,500 in 2 years. I raised $1 million. We bought a property, put up a tent. It was wild and crazy. But if I quote, not to get too religious on everybody here, right? But, there's a Bible verse that says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And when you get folks aligned around values and passion, they just begin to talk wherever they go. So you mentioned you heard about this scrappy startup called Bloom Growth. Why would somebody tell you about it? It's because this common shared value and passion that resonates through the community, people can't help but talk about it. And then it has the positive effect to, what the title of this podcast is, of strengthening the brand. That's kind of the outcome of it. But it's not the focal point. The focal point is the values, the shared value that we have. People internalize it, and then they just can't help but talk about it.
I think that's, it's interesting that you talk about it like that, because, we say to our clients all the time, you spend so much time often on the visual side of the brand. So there's like, what does the logo look like? What does the video say? What is the language? Which is all really, really important. But sometimes people forget that often, most of the time, the key touch points of the brand are people. So it could be the guy delivering your package. It could be the woman taking your order. It could be the person who answers the phone when you are in need. And that experience speaks 5,000 times more powerfully than any well-written value, any mission statement, any of these things. If people have a terrible experience with a delivery man, they append that back to the brand. But if they have an amazing experience with a delivery man, then suddenly you're like, oh, this is actually such a great company to work for. Because ultimately, most companies, most brands, in some way or another, are a service business. They are dealing with human beings. They are engaging with them in a way for them to take some sort of an action, to buy something, to subscribe, to listen, to follow, to pay money, to whatever that thing is. But essentially, you're trying to sort of get people to do that. And I love that
Yeah.
you've got these humans who you're not necessarily paying. They're not like salaried members. They're all successful people in their own right who've chosen to sort of fly your banner, as it
Yeah.
were, and run around promoting it.
Ross, can I share a story that exemplifies what you're talking about, especially
Please.
from an employee standpoint? So we have a gal in the software side of our business. We have a gal, and if you're watching this, yes, I'm going to give you a shout out here. So we have a gal on our team named Elba. She's on our customer service team. And our number one core value is we love helping. And Elba lives this day in and day out. This is, these shared values attracting employees, and not only strategic partners in our coaching community, but our employees as well. So Elba does software trainings, demos, best practices, things like that with leadership team members in the, client base that we have on our software platform. So time and time again, we get emails from our client base that go into our support, our ticketing system, and they say things like, I really want to meet with Elba. I love working with Elba. They literally use the word love describing their relationship with our customer service representative. When is the last time, Ross, you've gone to, you've gotten a training on a CRM that you're using, or you went to the grocery store and somebody checked you out, or a waiter, and you use the word love to describe the person that was assisting you? Like, I don't know if I ever have in my whole life. And here we have clients that say, I want to meet with Elba. Does she have a meeting link just for her? I love working with Elba. It's how do you get that? I can't force Elba to show up in that way. I can't make her be this person. It's who she is. It's a shared common value of why, understanding what we do, of giving back to the entrepreneurial community, that causes her to show up in the way that she does. And then it has this impact similar to the impact that our coaching community is having.
I love that story. And I can share one. We worked with an entrepreneur here in Johannesburg, René. He's got a company called Student Village. And we were helping him with how does he differentiate this thing from other agencies. And part of our process is we interview people, and one of the categories that we want to interview people is people who hold the culture. And he was like, you have to then interview the lady who greets you at the front door. And I was like, oh, that's a bit odd, because she's the receptionist, like no one thinks the receptionist is important. But when you go to the Student Village office, she greets you in the warmest, friendliest, happiest way. And if you're looking sad or tired or rushed, she'll get up and she'll be like, do you mind if I give you a hug? And if you're having a bad day, she gives like the best hug you've ever had. And like now there's this perception in my head where I'm like, I kind of want to go visit the Student Village. Oh, like there's this sort of positive association you start with this thing. It's got nothing to do with products, nothing to do with service, nothing to do with anything, but it all accrues back to that company and that brand in a positive way.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Ross.
So I mean, you've talked about this idea of shared purpose, and I guess when you started your initial intro, you were talking about people and how most of the problems in companies are people, and we've had a little bit of a light discussion around brands and how a lot of the brand touch points is often in people, and how difficult you can tell people what to do and what to say, but how they show up is completely up to them. How do you see this playing out with your clients, and how have you with Bloom, how have you built a team that kind of exemplifies this sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. What's interesting, and where most of the time in organizations, we do not have people who are actively acting as a terrorist or trying to intentionally make things bad within our organization. Most of the time, that's true. Most of the time, we have folks that want to do a good job. They want to perform. They want to meet expectations. So where's the breakdown in that? Most of the time, it's within communication, execution, assumptions, unclear expectations around the job. So the cohesive growth system or the framework deals with all of these aspects of working in a job and communicating and working with other teammates. So weekly meeting rhythms, that we get the right communication and execution through a standardized meeting that's powerful and productive. We get clarity on roles and responsibilities. Even today in one of our teams, or yesterday in one of our teams in our weekly meeting that we had with Bloom, with our organization, so a couple of our folks weren't clear as to who's doing what in a certain process. Well, when we do not have a defined process or defined roles and responsibilities or clarity as to who's doing what, man, we store it up here. Well, Ross, aren't you doing that? Well, no, Isaiah, you're supposed to. Well, no, isn't Andy supposed to do that? Well, what happened? Why did we drop the ball with this customer? Well, and then there's finger pointing and there's blame and defensiveness. And this begins to fracture the relationships. It begins to distance people. So this cohesive operating system or growth system provides the framework for communication to flow, for there to be clear expectations around roles and responsibilities, KPIs, etc. And it's done in such a way that the team feels empowered. Can I share an example of my family, Ross?
Of course.
Really, yeah, sweet.
I suppose you should probably be asking your family if you can do that.
Well, my little kids. So I've got 5 kids. My stepson's 22, Noah's 12, Jacob's 11, Joseph is 9, and Rosie Bear is 7. For the longest time with my little kids, I was the guy that wanted to do new activities. And it was like I had to force everybody to, well, let's go do this, or let's try this, or let's learn this. And it was me kind of forcing and dictating and driving activities, whether it's trips or learning a new skill, etc. And frankly, it got tiresome. So what I started doing about 3 years ago is I do a planning session with my children. If I was able to share my screen here, I'd share the screenshot with you. But essentially, I run a 4-hour session with my little kids where they have sticky notes and they write down their ideas of what they want to do, what they want to learn, and they stick them to the wall. It's this fun, engaging activity. And then that's about a 15 to 20 minute brainstorm. And then they present to the family their ideas. By the end of this, we agree upon what we want to do, whether it's a vacation, learning how to swim, learning how to ride a bike, learning a new sport, whatever it might be. And what happened, then we set, it's similar to what we do with the leadership team. Then we set goals for the year, and then we break it down what we're going to do in the next 90 days. And we got these big, if I can pick up my pen, I got these big Post-its like that I stick to the wall. And my wife hates it, by the way. She's like, Isaiah, when can we take these sticky notes off our walls? I'm like, honey,
never.
This is our planning. Come on.
Never.
And my kids love it. But what I found, though, Ross, and the same thing that happens with a team, is that now I'm not the guy that's driving results or execution within my family. My kids are driving me. They're like, Papa, did you get our passports renewed? Because we're going to go visit Grandma and Grandpa 2 weeks in July. Have you done that yet? Like they're the ones that are hey, are we going to, and then, Papa, can we have our planning session? We haven't had our planning session yet, Papa, because we don't know what we want to do yet. Like they're the ones that are, and this is what happens within an organization. It's like each employee, their voice is heard. They have the opportunity to make their department better. There's a framework to house the communication, the ideas, the problems, the opportunities. And then there's a problem-solving mechanism so that we can get all of the people within our organization moving in the same rhythm, helping us build a better business, proactively solving problems and creating a greater, better client experience. So hopefully that made sense. And that shift, though, of clarity in roles and responsibilities, the framework for problem solving, all of these things are baked into the growth system or the growth framework. And then the outcome is that Elba knows what she can do with clients. She's excited. She's empowered. She can treat them like, the most important person on the planet and make them feel valued. And our engineering team can build tools and features in the software that are because they're empowered to run with this, and the communication mechanisms that are built in as well.
Fascinating. There's a question from the audience: is, does structure and planning ever get in the way of real conversation versus people being super involved and being autonomous?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. And I don't think it's the process itself. Well, from my experience, what I've seen, it's more so the facilitation of the ideas. I've been doing this a long time. I've worked with thousands of companies and leadership teams over the last decade. Got a lot of experience. Folks that are self-implementing, like you as the owner, entrepreneur, somebody on your leadership team is facilitating a planning session. It's a lot of times when the owner's doing it, what I've noticed is it's more of telling everybody what to do as opposed to drawing out ideas and facilitating conversation and then deciding as a team what we want to focus on. There is a big difference if I come to my team and tell them, hey, Sheila, I need you to do this. Andy, I need you to do this. Brent, you're doing this. Catherine, you're doing. If I dictate and tell them what to do, it's not received as well. They're not necessarily enrolled in this. But if we together as a team build a list of opportunities and obstacles and then decide together, obviously I'm getting my input in on this conversation, as are the teammates, where we have this healthy conflict going back and forth to help us make better decisions. That's where the enrollment comes in. And that's where I've seen this kind of a process fall apart as far as planning sessions. Hopefully that helps answer the question. If you have a coach facilitate the conversation, you can get a much better result. And I'm not saying that so that you hire me as a coach. This is me speaking from experience here. Having a third party that doesn't have any bias in the conversation facilitate these ideas and help the team and engage each team member gets a result where people are aligned, enrolled, on board, ready to attack the quarter of the year with the priorities that they set as a team.
I mean, I think this is true for many things. I totally agree. One of the things that sort of started part of this conversation was, we've been looking at EOS, we've been looking at an operating system, we've toyed with self-implementing, and it's actually now decided to not do that because, one of our values is an outsider's perspective. It's so hard to fix your own stuff. It's so hard to apply even if it's your trade, to apply your own trade to yourself. And my team will know because they're busy revamping my brand, even though I asked them not to. They are doing it because they have their own free will, but it's hard doing your own stuff when you've got someone who you trust, who can also call you out and push you a little bit and reaffirm your decisions. That makes that whole process a lot easier to sort of make it through, whether it's doing a rebrand or changing a financial model or getting like changing a business process or running a strategy. And right. As a leader, it's often nice to be able to participate as an equal as opposed to kind of running the show.
Yeah, you nailed it, Ross. Even so, imagine Todd and I are in sessions together. Todd's a co-author of the book Flourish. Both of us have an enormous amount of experience facilitating growth coaching, and we still invite a Bloom growth coach to facilitate our session. Even though Todd has like 2 decades of experience, I have, 7 years, and we still invite somebody else to come in and facilitate. And thank God that we do. Not that we don't get along. We need help. We need help. We need help of somebody from the outside that can bring the conversation back. That can, I can't imagine why they'd give me this feedback. But the feedback for me was I was overselling my ideas. So of course, my ideas are the best ones, right? We should do this, obviously. And that's one of my superpowers. I'm really good at enrolling, selling, all that. And with an outside, a third party that's facilitating this conversation, the ability to see that and give the feedback in real time, allowing the team to participate as equals as we're deciding upon the goals that we're setting. It's powerful.
It is powerful. I'm gonna change the focus from internal to external quickly, because I think they're
Sure.
sort of related. But one of the things we believe is that companies that have the ability, the product, the service, and the ability to build a community around their brand are going to be infinitely harder to unseat than companies who don't. And when we talk about a community, we mean people that are invested in the success of the business, either emotionally or financially or both. And you've built a fairly strong community of these sort of high profile people who've convinced that, you've convinced them to sort of pick up this operating system and build a business off the back of it. So now, Kim Whitaker she's enrolled in the success of the business, because the more successful you are, the more successful she is. The more successful she is, the more successful you are.
That's exactly right.
How have you gone about collecting these people? How have you gone about screening them? How have you gone about like incentivizing them to sort of participate? Because in a way it's risky for them, but because they're sort of hanging their hat on your coat stand, but it's also risky for you, because you allowing them to wear your brand and you don't actually have any control over what they do. I mean, you do have some control, but ultimately if they go run a strategy session a different way, there's not much you can actually do about it.
I think the starting point, Ross, of when we kick this off, and I think this will be valuable for our listeners also who are interested in doing the same thing about building community around your brand. We started with the folks that we already had within our network. Okay, so we didn't start this community, with digital ads and connecting people that we don't know, haven't had relationship with. So we started with our network first, right? We built a list of folks that we felt were in alignment with our values, that shared the same, why or passion for helping entrepreneurs, and were at the right point or stage in their life where this made sense. And for us, it's entrepreneurs who are in transition, where they've recently exited their business or it's professionally managed by a leadership team and they're no longer in the day-to-day operations. They don't necessarily want to start another business and manage people, but they're at a point and stage in their life where they want to do something meaningful and use the wealth of experience that they have to give back. So that's the first, tip, if you will, is to start with your network. That, of course, and that makes sense. The next thing that is vitally important, Ross, and this is for anything that you're doing within your organization, it's dial in your process, okay? And obsess over your process. Well, Isaiah, what are you talking about? Well, what do you do? What do you say? What is the presentation? What are the steps that you take when you connect with somebody within your target audience that has the potential of joining your community? And obsessing over this process and continually updating it. Now that our book came out, what do you think is a step in our process that we're adding, Ross? We just launched this a week ago. Now we're sending a book.
You're not selling them a book for $299 as your first revenue generation opportunity.
Yeah, it's part of the process, though, is my point of this, is that we have these steps laid out, what to say, how to say it, and a lot of it is active listening, understanding. If you haven't done the work of dialing in your personal purpose or your personal why, my why is to empower the people around me to flourish. No pun intended with the title of the book, right? Empower the people around me to flourish. Well, how do I do that? When I'm on a call with an entrepreneur, I want to understand what are their wants, needs. What are they looking for in the next couple of years? Is there synergy or alignment with will I actually be able to help them with what we have with our operating system and our coaching community, our entrepreneurial coaching community? There's times, Ross, in these discovery calls where I've told entrepreneurs they're excited about joining, and I've literally told them, hey, I don't think this is going to be a good fit for you. Based on what you shared with me, boom, 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 I don't think it's going to be, I want you to strongly consider if now is the right time for you to step into this. And we have identified the requirements for what people need in order to be successful as a growth coach, and then sharing those up front. A lot of the coaching communities are designed around making money. We've got quotas and high price tags to join. Doesn't matter if you're successful or not. Take out a loan, purchase this, and away we go. That's not us. We've got a high bar. We evaluate if we think they'll be successful or not. And then, just like you said with Kim Whitaker, who is a rock star, by the way, and her book is coming out here as well sometime soon. Kim, if you're on this call, we love you. She's in South Africa.
No, she's in Hong Kong at the moment, so she's not.
Oh, she is. All right.
Yeah.
If you need an amazing growth coach, Kim is the gal you want to see. So, we're vested in this and helping our coaching community succeed. And it starts from the first point of contact. And then the process goes along the way. But that's important, though. If you're building community or if you're in sales, dial in your process. Make sure it's consistent, get all your people trained, and then continuously update it as you have a better way.
So I mean, I just want to pause there. So you talked about the using people in your network as the first step, and you've talked about the process. I'm very interested, for myself, is like, what do you like? What are the, I don't know, is there like a theory around what a good process looks like? How do you, how do you think about that? Or is it just like, do these three things? Is it that simple?
I mean, there's obviously sales books that you can read. There's Sandler sales, so there's a lot of information that you can get around building a sales process. I think that the most important, and it'll vary depending upon industry, et cetera, but the most important piece of this in my mind that so many people don't get is this art of active listening to understand as opposed to listening to reply. There's a distinction here. And for me, my mind races all the time. I'm thinking. I have to calm that. Landmark Education coins this as the already always listening, where when we're in conversation with somebody, our mind is racing. This was so bad 10 years ago for me that I would literally interrupt people when they're talking. I would try to finish their sentences as if I could divine what they're about to say. But my mind, I was listening to reply. I wasn't listening to understand. And in sales or in the process or in building community, this is something that I would invite you to master, is be present with people. Get your distractions out of your space, the phones, the technology, all of these things, and be present with people. Make gentle eye contact. The trick that I have to do is I have to repeat your words in my head. A lot of times people say, if you see Isaiah talking to himself silently, he's in deep thought. And it's one of my quirks, I guess, but it's the way that I keep my mind focused on the conversation. If I don't do that, I'll miss it. I won't be present. I'll miss what you're telling me. And in a world where we're so distracted, everybody is so focused on themselves, this is, man, I hate to say this, but it's a differentiator. I very rarely run into folks that have mastered this skill set of active listening, being present in a conversation.
And I guess when you combine that with generosity, it's a great thing. I heard this. I mean, I was in Omaha at an event with a client, and I was having a conversation with someone, and he was launching a new beverage, and I was like, "Oh, you need to build a category." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And we had a little conversation about it, and then like a week later, I got a really good article about it, and I sent it to him, and I was like, "This is what I'm talking about." And he's like, "Oh, thank you so much." And then the other day, he actually messaged me back about something. He was like, "Hey, you said something to me, and here's like something for you." It like unlocks this sort of human exchange, and I guess that is, I guess in sales, in branding, in all of these things, people often forget that you're selling human to human. Yes, the legal docs are signed company to company, but ultimately if one human in that chain decides they don't like you, and conversely, if they decide they do like you, it can be the difference between success and failure. It can be the difference between signing that thing or not, because we are ultimately all selling to people and branding to people. We're not, well, I don't know, I was reading a thing around the dark internet, and we, half of us are selling to computers, but that's a whole side conversation we can have a different day. So it took us on a segue around the system. So you talked about having like dialing in your system and starting with a thing. What are the other pieces to building a community? There's got to be three. McKinsey says you always have to have three. Like you need a third one,
Well,
or else you
yeah.
haven't done your jobs well enough as a.
Well, so let's see. I think the first one that I would say would be the values, right? The shared purpose, the why, the values. I would lump that all into one bucket. The other one is the network. I think that it is really hard to build a community if you don't already have somewhat of a network. You leverage your current network, and then you leverage their network, and it just grows from there. So those two, and then the third one is the product. The actual product or service has to be, up to par, quality, make sense, fit with, what it is you're doing. So in our case, we've got our values, purpose, why, which I've already shared. The network that we started with, EO, YPO, the entrepreneurial community, we've been in this world for decades. So that it just made sense when we decided 2.5 years ago, what direction do we want to take? This just made sense. And then the third one was the operating system, the Bloom Growth OS. From the data that I mentioned earlier that we have from our software platform, it was so clear that there's gaps in the current systems that exist in the marketplace. Of course, we have all of the goal setting, the plan, the weekly meetings, the accountability structure with roles and responsibilities, that all of these things make sense. And then we filled in, because as you mentioned, Ross, we have a lot of high caliber folks, entrepreneurs in our coaching community. So even though we had the why and the purpose and the connection, and they were in our network and already trusted us, there's no way they would join us if our product didn't make sense, if it wasn't good or better than, and they've noticed the same gaps as they've implemented different systems within their own businesses. So those would be the three things that I would mention as being required.
Thank you. This is always an interesting one for me, because as the founder and the salesperson, you have to sort of believe in your product, and if you don't, then you're probably going to lose. But what do you differentiation is such a hard thing. What do you think makes this thing really different and stand out compared to other, systems that have long proven track records and been very successful and helped lots of people kind of grow businesses? What is truly different here?
Yeah, it's a great question. One is our coaching community are experienced entrepreneurs. That's one. And then this caliber, this bar that we have of allowing people to join the community makes it exclusive. If you hire a Bloom Growth coach, you know that your coach has been there, done that, has real world experience of running, growing, scaling a business. That in my mind is so important, because every business is like a snowflake as to what they have going on within their business. The other aspect also, Ross, or differentiator, is the relationship aspect.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so if anybody in our audience has been an EO or YPO and you've been a part of a forum, it's a forum-like experience with your leadership team. There's some clients that I coach in Chicago, architectural firm. We've been, after 2 years, tremendous business results, quadrupled their net operating income, growth in the business, dialed in their process. We could just list all of the great things that happened while implementing this, the growth system, and working with me as a coach in their business. But when I asked them after 2 years, I asked them, what is the best thing or the most impactful part of doing Bloom within your business? You know what they said? They looked at me in the eye, and Simon got teary-eyed, and he's like, Isaiah, I think that I'm a better human because of doing this with you for the last 2 years. I just about, what a thing to say, literally said, I'm a better human because of this. The best part wasn't quadrupling their net operating income or growing their business. The best part was becoming a better human through our relationship curriculum. And it's like popcorn. Clients that have been on the journey for 2+ years experience this shift in their relationships. It's like the top 10 to 20 closest relationships in their lives get better, and not because the people around them are changing. This is a lot of self-reflection that's going on here, right? A lot of the things that I've been talking about, the active listening, the being present, managing emotional triggers. I could go on and on and on of what this curriculum entails, but essentially it gives us the tools. It's almost like blind spots that we have around being a human and how we relate to people. We don't see it. We don't see the perspective that our team has of us. And through these exercises and through this curriculum, it comes to the forefront, and we begin to make these changes. And we're on this journey of becoming a better human, is how I would describe it.
A better human with more money, more success, more growth, more time, more fans, more respect from your family, everything you could ever dream of.
Yeah.
So I'm interested, right at the beginning of our conversation, you were talking about, you started your first business when you were 18. Like, if there was that one thing you could go back and like really land on your younger self, like what is that thing that you would send back to yourself?
So funny that you asked this question. If there's one thing that I would do differently, that would, over 10 years, I think I had around 60,000 customers, and not once did I collect a name, an email address, or a phone number. Not once. I basically got new customers every day. And that's how I grew my business, was this hard work of only focusing on new customers. And it's wild, Ross. If you're listening to this call, well, duh, Isaiah, of course you would focus on retaining customers and upselling and, having a nurturing campaign and all of these things. But I was young and I had no idea what I was doing. So that's one. It would be build a customer database and nurture that database. And that provides opportunities to upsell, cross-sell, all of get referrals, all of these great things that come from having raving fans and happy customers and clients. Yeah. And then when I transition into, the work that we did in Central America, the thing that I was missing there, because now we had a team, we had 100, employees, multiple satellite locations. Like, it was a pretty big operation. And we would do annual planning. We'd set goals for the year. We'd get all excited. The thing that we were missing, though, was a powerful weekly meeting agenda. Let me say that again. The thing that we were missing was a powerful weekly meeting agenda that basically would keep our highest priorities top of mind. And we ended up spinning our wheels, solving the same problems over and over and over again. We lacked the execution component of a growth system, and the weekly meeting is part of that. But if you're not running a powerful weekly meeting that your employees look forward to, that you look forward to, if you dread your meetings, or you're not getting value out of them, or they're not productive, or you're solving the same problems week after week, month after month, there's a better way to do it. And Todd Smart shared this with me about 10 years ago, showed me a weekly meeting agenda in our software platform when we met for the first time. And I had an epiphany. I was like, where were you 20 years ago, Todd? Those would be the things that I would say are transformative if you don't have those dialed in your business.
I'm sad that you said that, because now my management team is going to ask us to improve our management meeting, even though it is pretty good. I'm just not sure we always look forward to it.
Well,
what are the,
touch base with Kim, Ross, right? She'll, if you guys have opportunities to improve your meetings, Kim can help you guys do that. Yeah.
So I've got Jael asking here, what are the earliest signals that a community is forming before the metrics show it?
Oh my goodness. Now you're asking me to be vulnerable, Ross. So, you were right when you stated earlier on around a level of risk associated with, joining a community, for example. Your reputation, the product, you're putting your name out there and now leveraging your network and kind of being a brand ambassador for, Bloom, if you will, in this case, or whatever your business is. So I would say that the beginning indications of a successful community is when the community begins to help and support the community. Isaiah, what are you talking about? Well, at the beginning, it was Todd and I that were answering all the questions, guiding, leading, giving, helping, supporting, all of this. Well, at a certain stage, people become successful. They internalize the content, the growth system. They understand how this works, the impact that it has. The why is always there, but this began to snowball when our community began to voluntarily support each other from this abundance mentality, this help first. I literally have one of our growth coaches, Jude Olinger, who's out of New Orleans. He's crushing it in his coaching practice, so successful. And I helped him in the beginning, called him every other day, coached, mentored, all that. Now he's asking me. He's like, Isaiah, what can I do to help you? I want to give back. Who can I mentor in the community? It's like this. I want to do the same thing that you did for me with other coaches in our community. I would say that's when the snowball begins to happen, when it's no longer you doing all the work, but your community is beginning to engage, mentor, coach, promote, whatever's relevant to your community.
I think that's such a lovely note to end on. I think it shows that power in when people emotionally connect to something and there's a structure to allow them to sort of do that. I think that's when, community can start building your brand and your brand can start building community because, people notice the people in it and they notice the identity that they're wearing. And, that leads to a little bit of curiosity, and curiosity is the first step, and then people can sort of suck in. So I think it is interesting that you started to build this, and I'm interested to watch how you sort of maintain that level of exclusivity at scale, because this is always the thing. It's easy in inverted commas to find 50 really good people, but to find 5,000 really good people is it's like a whole nother game that you almost need to play, which is interesting.
Yeah. Wonderful problems to solve, Ross, right? As every business begins to grow and scale, of course,
Yes.
It increases with complexity, and having a growth system or a framework to handle it and to guide it is what's needed and works. We've seen it over and over and over again.
I like that you ended that with a really, really clean punt for Bloom Growth. Isaiah, Thank you so much for joining us. It was great having you on the interview, and time flew by, which is always for me a sign of a good interview, and I'm not looking at the clock desperate for it to end. So thank you for your time, thank you for your energy, and thank you for showing up today.
Yeah, you got it, Ross. My pleasure.
So that's it for this week. We'll be back with more business and branding in the next episode. Subscribe to get every episode. And thank you to all our live guests who showed up. If you want to ask questions and have them answered live, please subscribe to be invited to the next one. In the meantime, we'd appreciate it if you'd like or share this episode with someone in your network if you think it's valuable for them. I believe that sharing actionable knowledge is one of the most generous things a human being can do. 10 More Questions is brought to you by Nice Work. We are dedicated to helping people and businesses make a dent in the world through brands that people actually care about. Thank you for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.